multiple best-selling author, the number one best expert, thought leader.
I hated sales. I thought it was a disgusting, horrible profession. He walked me up to the hiring manager at Xerox and said, "You need to hire her."
The Xerox 914 copier.
The most successful single product of all time.
And 3 weeks later, I was working for the best sales training company in the world. Did I aspire to this? Never. Did I have fun doing it? I loved it. I loved the challenges of sales. When I first started selling, I felt like I'd died and gone to heaven. We're all selling something. I'm selling an idea now. I'm not selling anything else. I'm selling a concept. So I said, that was easy. And instead, my brain screamed, "No, it's not." And I went, "Whoa, your job is to make people feel that it's possible for them to sell to big companies and get big contracts."
What do you think a lot of people don't take action?
They don't think that there's anything they can do.
My biggest recommendation is to slow down. I think the most important thing is to really stop.
Being a leading voice in business, best-selling author, and the number one sales expert, Jill Konrath has joined me today to talk about growth beyond sales, which by coincidence is the name of the fourth season of the show. In 2020, Jill has moved on to create a new project, what'sreallypossible.com, a place where you can get ideas, insights, inspirations, and resources to create a better future. Jill and I talked about that future and what can we do to get there. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy the episode. So something that I wanted first to kind of clarify with you. So when I was doing the research, and I remember the first time we spoke with you specifically mentioned, Michael, you remember that I moved on from my sales expert career to something else. And I said, yes, I remember. So we're not going to talk about that. And when I was, doing the research for the interview, I saw so many great interviews of you as a sales expert when you gave an interview to talk about sales. So today, what I wanted for us to create a great piece of content with Jill and then Michael, not about sales, but something that you're currently passionate about, something that is more beyond the sales. Actually, this is the season is actually the name of the fourth season is, growth beyond sales, right? So I think that,
Well, I think that there's some things we can tie in from sales in terms of what are the skills that work in sales and, how have I transitioned and I mean, we're all selling something regardless of, I'm selling an idea now. I'm not selling anything else. I'm selling a concept. And so, so many people sell concepts. If they're selling services, you're selling a concept that you're able to create something that's not physical.
Mm-hmm. It's just a different storytelling, right? It's the same storytelling, just different, right?
Yes.
No, I mean, Jill, you've done so much for the sales community over the years. And, again, you have an impressive number of great interviews on the subject of sales. But as you pointed out on your LinkedIn, and I will go back to that later, you're much more than your accomplishments. I want us to talk about the importance of the journey, right? Your journey in particular, and the ideas and the passions that came out of that journey.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my kind of agenda for today, all right?
All right, that sounds good.
And for me to understand the journey, can you describe what your life was like as a multiple best-selling author, the number one best expert in business, thought leader, who at the same time is the mother, is the wife, and then the community activist. What you've been going through tackling these totally different aspects of your life all these years?
Well, let me just say that it gets challenging at times when you think of, working full-time, passionately working full-time and loving what I was doing with work, but also loving family and wanting to be around family and keep a cohesive family and be involved with the kids. So it wasn't easy all the time, but it was worth it, to try to balance things. Because I would not have been happy had I given up any one of them. I tried to be an at-home mom for a year, and that didn't work out real well. because I needed to do something that engaged my brain, that was tackling a challenge that was physically out there that I was learning from. And so perhaps because I'm a learner at heart and I love figuring out new ways of doing things and how to address the different challenges, I needed to get in there and get involved. And I loved the challenges of sales. When I first started selling, I felt like I died and gone to heaven, because for the first time in my life, my job was to be out there with all these different companies that were doing all sorts of things. And it was fascinating to me to go into an accounting office one day, to go tour a window factory later on in that afternoon, and to talk to these people who had all these different jobs. When you grow up, you don't see any of that. You just see the common things that people do. But to be in all these different businesses, it was like, oh, fascinating. It expanded my world, that it helped me see different perspectives. But then there came a point, and again, with family issues, where there were multiple deaths in my family. And at one point, my passion for sales stopped because I had other things that I needed to focus on. And when I got through that part, which was a wading through part, then it was time for something new. And I needed a new challenge. I needed a bigger challenge, a more significant challenge. Although, like I said, I love sales, and you can't take the sales out of me, because it's definitely a huge part of who I am as a human being. And my brain automatically clicks into sales mode. I listen to you, anything you say, and I stop to think, now, who is he trying to talk to? What is he trying to do? How is he or she conveying their message? Ooh, they said something, that word, they shouldn't use that word because it's too complex. They need to talk like a normal human being. I mean, my brain is going like that all the time in the background.
So fascinating. Talking about the different roles or hats, let's say, you've been wearing all these years, or aspects of life. I believe a lot of the time you were able to combine a lot of them, interconnect, interline them for the kind of holistic lifestyle, right? It must be so exhausting, like traveling all the time and, working on your books, working with your clients, giving all these speeches, right? And then collecting, like shooting videos, etc. But at the same time, I've seen you've been active in voluntary work since like 1994 at the Destination Imagination, or etc. Right? So help me to understand what you've been going through in terms of your thoughts. Like, hey, is it like a one project and I'm just wanting to prioritize that? Because so many of us right now, we don't do a lot of community work, don't participate in any voluntary work just because we don't have time, right? Because we are building our career, we're building our projects, we're working with teams, or we have that and then the family. But you were successfully able to do all of that, right? So help me understand.
I said no to a lot of things. Okay. I'm pretty good at saying no to things that aren't mine to do. For example, the Parent Teacher Association at the elementary schools, where they had, parents doing things that would bore me to tears, I said no to. But I did take on, I taught junior achievement to fifth graders, and junior achievement being how to run and start a business. And so I taught that for a couple of years. But the biggest thing, and you mentioned Destination Imagination, and I'll just talk a little bit about that because not everybody has heard about it. It's a creative problem-solving program for kids from early elementary school through college. And they work together in teams of 5 to 7. Each year, the organization puts out like 5 different challenges. And they kind of appeal to different kinds of kids with different talents, but they all have some of the same aspects through it. And the team of kids has to solve the challenge on their own, and they have to go, and it actually involves a performance. It involves some scientific type of stuff and making things work a certain way. It involves creativity. And the kids have to go and present their solution to the judges at a regional competition. And the winner of the regional competition goes to the state competition. And the winner of the state competition goes to the international competition.
Right.
So it's a very challenging type of thing. as a leader. Now, and I got involved in it because my daughter did it for a few years, and our school district ran into some financial problems and cut the cost of coaches for the program. And my daughter came home from school one day. I think she was in 6th or 7th grade, 6th grade probably. And she threw herself on the couch and started sobbing. I mean, heart-wrenching sobs. And I asked her what was wrong, and she said, they've canceled the program and they can't afford to pay for the coaches, and I'm going to die. I'm going to die if I can't be in Destination Imagination. And when you've got your little, your young daughter who's telling you she's going to die, it's like, oh, my heart was, breaking in two. And then she looks up at me and she says, but I talked to the principal and he said that if a parent was willing to coach, they'd keep the program going. Will you coach? Okay, so that's, I had no choice in that matter. It's like, as a parent, I needed to coach. So I said, sure. But this is a program on creativity, and it's nothing I had ever studied in my whole life. And in fact, I felt like a very uncreative person because to me, creativity was arts. It was fiction. It was music. And while I had done some of that, to say that I was creative was like crazy. But so I started reading and studying creativity, what it took to get ideas. How do you do different things? How do you lead people in coming up with ideas that they haven't thought of before? How do you send them down a research tunnel? How do you get them to shape the ideas and make it even better without telling them it sucks? But, instead inviting them to see if we can do it a little bit better. And to me, it was a phenomenal growth experience. I discovered I was creative. Believe it or not. I never knew that before. But I was creative in a different way. And that's when I started to realize the entire spectrum of creativity. And my father was a mechanical engineer. He actually invented the color copier back in the early 1970s and has some patents on it. And I always just thought he was an engineer. And then I realized how he had engineering creativity, something that I had none of, but he could look at how do we make this work so we can get print coming out on paper that's not just black and white. So it gave me a whole new perspective of myself and my capabilities and what I could do. And later it spilled into writing. Now I'm writing. I'm writing more technical stuff, but I'm bringing creativity into the technical stuff so that my reading, what I write is more fun to read. Because it's not just about conveying information when you do that. It's about engaging people.
It's interesting when you combine the creativity with your, sales background. And this is exactly the discussion that I had a few days ago with one of our other guests, that modern sales, with regards to how efficient they are with all the tools, with everything, with the pipelines, with funnels, they are not creative enough, right? There's no creativity enough into that.
No, there's no creativity. And there's a drive towards more. And to me, one of the things I took, into all this was the ability to step back and look at what I was doing at the same time I was doing it. And when I first started selling, I was in a class at Xerox for, it was a pre-management class. So it wasn't when I first started, but they said that only 1 out of 7 salespeople, based on research, was able to self-assess or self-assessed after a sales meeting. So I remember hearing that, and I had always been a self-assessor. I'd come out of a meeting, get off, it was pre-Zoom, get off a Zoom meeting or a conversation, and I would sit down and say, whoa, where did I run into trouble? What didn't work? And also what did work, because it's just as crucial to understand what you did well so you can repeat it. Like, I asked this question and man, they just were explosive in telling me things that, I never thought they'd tell me. But to recall and memorize that and to keep iterating. And we so turned sales into a script, and saying the right things and everything. But the reality is we're dealing with human beings, and you have to have a conversation with them. You have to get them to feel comfortable working with you, that you do have the knowledge and expertise. One of the things I found was that questions are probably the best thing to show your expertise.
Right.
If you can ask a good question that says, Michael, based on my work with other companies like yours, one of the big things that they're really
Right.
running into these days is this and this and this. How big of an issue is that with you guys?
Right.
It was an easy way to show that I've been talking to other people, but the question required a setup as opposed to just saying, what keeps you awake at night, which is the stupidest question in the world. But to say, in talking to other people similar to you who've got these jobs, this is what I'm hearing consistently, and how big of a deal for you, and how are you handling it? And that's a conversation. And then they know you're a smart person who is focused on helping them, not a product pitching salesperson who just is disgusting.
But it also speaks a great deal about the character with regards to self-reflection, right?
Yes.
And analyzing, right? So I think that you've been, as even right now when you mentioned analyzing the questions, analyzing this or that, or what you're going to be saying, etc. It's a lot of self-reflection. You're reflecting and learning, right? And self-conscious. People in sales these days, especially the ones that were brought up just recently, don't have that, right? They have passion, they have drive, right? They have tools, but they don't have the self-reflection, the self-conscious to be able to just sit down and analyze.
Well, and see, I think to me, that's the role of a sales leader, to help the people realize that this is how they're going to get better and everything. And even to talk about experimenting, because to me, experimentation is a foundation of everything we do. We're never going to do it right the first time. And if we throw up our arms and say, didn't work, I mean, I have to, but say it didn't work. Okay, what else can I try? And as a sales leader, how could you create a sales environment where all your reps are experimenting and sharing their experimenting with each other, which would raise them all to a higher level? When I first started selling and I finally figured out how to beat a certain competitor, I was so excited because they had come out with a new product. They were killing us. Yeah. And they were setting us up. They had a way of setting us up that made us look bad. And I finally figured out a way to do it. And I did it a few times to ensure that it was consistent and repeatable from a setup point. And then I would call together my colleagues and say, you guys, I want to do a training session on how to beat this competitor because I figured it out. And so I did that. Every time I learned something new, I'd call together my colleagues and say, hey, you guys, this is how I figured out that. And I teach them. That was just something I did because to me, it seems like knowledge doesn't do anything if it's just stuck in your head. Yeah. It needs to be out there and shared.
Yeah. But also what I think is we have so much information out there and we're consuming it on a daily basis. A lot of very technical, a lot of learnings, right? But we don't have enough conversations that will get us thinking, right? And this is actually the reason why I wanted my fourth season of the podcast to be about to help people think more rather than help to educate them. If they're gonna listen to this for like 60, 90 minutes and it got them someone thinking about something that they didn't think about before, right? For me, that's the win, right? I didn't want them to learn more about sales or appointment setting or different tricks or tactics, right? Because there's so much great information out there if you want to learn and apply that, right? But sometimes we don't consume enough information about people to think and analyze, self-reflect, build the self-conscious, right? And
it's crucial to be, to get people thinking. It's interesting, you think about what do you have to do to get people to open themselves to new ways of doing things. And I remember when I first decided to write a book, and it was after a couple years of really bad sales, because I had a couple big clients who both ran into trouble from Wall Street at the same time and were told to cut expenses. As a consultant, you are an expense. You're not on their payroll. And so I was booked out for 5 months. And so I lost everything. And so then I had to go back and rebuild my book of business from ground zero. And suddenly nobody answered the phone. All calls rolled to voicemail. Nobody responded to my emails. It's like, what in the world just happened here? There's been a seismic shift in how people behave. And I spent a year experimenting in terms of
Yeah.
what does it take to
Mm-hmm.
for me to get my own business back. But secondarily, once I figured it out, I like to share it with other people. So then I had to
Yeah.
figure out how could I take me out of there and my personal strengths and my value proposition and, take me out and make it so there was a way that you could do it yourself by,
Yeah.
by if I could break it down into pieces. And so I did figure it out and how
Mm-hmm.
to take Jill out of it and make it so it would work for the bulk of people. And that
Mm-hmm.
was my first book, Selling Big Companies. But when I sat down to write the book, I had just
Right.
read another book called The
Mm-hmm.
Highest Goal. And it said, before you do any major project,
Mm-hmm.
ask yourself, what is your highest goal? And so I thought, I'll ask myself that question. I'm just sitting down here right now. So I asked myself, and of course I answered very smugly, it's to show people how to sell to big companies. It's like, well, that's the title of my book, Selling to Big Companies. So I said, that was easy. And
Yeah.
instead, my brain screamed, no, it's not. And I went, no.
Mm-hmm.
That was a real revelation. No, it's not. And I sat there for a moment, not stunned, not knowing what to do. And then an answer formed inside my head, and it said, your job is to make people feel that it's possible, to feel that it's possible for them to sell to big companies and get big contracts. That shifts what you have to do as a person. Because now, if I was writing for a lot of people in the small and medium business community, they would look at me and say, well, Jill, you're from a top-notch company and you got trained with all the best trainers in the world.
Right.
And in fact, your training program is sold nationwide as the standard. They would say that. So then I had to stop and think, okay, what do I have to do in order for people to understand it so that they feel that it's possible? And there was only one answer that came to my mind. I had to tell them when I failed, how I failed and screwed up, and then how I learned it. So everything that, I talk about in my books, I share my own learnings and how I sucked at different things, so that people will realize that it's possible, that there's a journey forward and that they could connect with it and not go, well, that's easy for you to say, Jill, I'm just, I just work for a small company. There's just 10 of us who sell, so it's a different frame to do it from that perspective. What is your higher purpose in doing this?
Mm-hmm. I've talked with a few of my guys just recently. It's actually with my head of HR, and we've talked about what's happening right now with regards to recession and the team and how to support people and people burning out, etc. Right? And one quote that I remember from the conversation was that we want to inspire, and we wanted to people get inspired, right? Or people inspire and then get inspired, right? And I think that it speaks to what you just said about the shift, right? So if you can get the idea in that it's possible, that you can actually do that, then it's a totally different ballgame, right? Yeah.
If you don't think it's possible, you shut down. I just make a transition in terms of what I'm doing now. My website is called, my new website, What's Really Possible. It's not about sales, but it's about looking at the situation in the world and saying, and I see so many people who are just so alienated from everything that's going on, whether it's the politics, with the battles that are going on, it's what social media is doing. I see right now about the environment, we're in the midst of a heat storm. The oceans are heating up much worse. It's going to lead to much more things. And yet we have a nation, a world that isn't focused on the environment. And that may be the most important thing. But we got to do something. And we can't just go, well, what can I do? We have to say, what is possible? How can I contribute? What is my role in doing something like this?
Yeah, I think that we obviously need to be an example with regards to, helping to curate or helping to cultivate different values and virtues. I saw on your website that you guys are, you're cultivating let me see here. Actually, even wrote down a few. So values of community, integrity, responsibility, right? And I think that there's so many people out there that have access to the audience, or again, people in the politics, they're just hypocrites in a way that they talk about caring about the environment, but they
yeah.
actually don't, right? It's cool to be a very like like environmental activist when you have your own private jet and then you're just
Oh yeah,
using the
your own
fuel,
private
right?
jet. Yeah,
Yeah, it's just
which is like one of
insane.
the worst things, right? That you can be doing, and your own private island in the Caribbean, which may be underwater before long, but
Yeah. So talking about people, like, we all meet people who shape our life or who shaped our life in this or that form, right? Who was that person? Who were those people for you who cultivated these values of community, integrity, responsibility in you?
oh, my folks, they were good folks. They were really good people, and that's how they raised us.
Mm-hmm.
To be a good person. I just was very fortunate. I had good parents who made a difference. Really did make a difference.
Now, the question is, who do you now cultivate these virtues to,
Pardon?
or in others? How do you now cultivate the same virtues in other people?
Well, right now with my What's Really Possible website, I'm very much focused on trying to get people to do something and get them engaged with an issue or something that they care desperately about. The whole thing about What's Really Possible is me trying to spur other people into action about what matters to them. And I believe in this world of ours that we all come with different interests and different talents, and to only prescribe one way is not the right thing to do. But what I'm trying to do is to inspire people to take action, whatever their action is, and to realize that the path that we're on as a country, as a road, as a local community, it doesn't have to be the only path. There are multiple paths.
Right.
And I'll be getting into some more stuff as I go. I mean, I'm in a very transitional mode because most people, who are reading me right now come from the sales field, and they don't come yet because of what I'm doing today. So I'm sort of walking slowly. And by the way, it's like I'm selling for a different company right now. I don't know the words to use, and I don't know my product exactly and everything. Right. So I'm really, stepping into it. But there's more that's coming. There's more that's coming that's going to be tackling some real issues. But I have to find how to do it. And I'm in the learning mode, because you don't just go from
together. Let's practice together right now. Let's practice together.
Okay,
Tell me more about what's really possible. Tell me more. What is it about generally? What you're working on? Tell me about your team.
Well, let me just say right now, what it really is What's Really Possible is an effort to get people to expand their minds, to include other people, and to see what we can do to make things better. Here in the U.S., Republican versus Democrat. I mean, that's crazy that it's this and this and this.
Yeah.
When there are millions of us in the middle who, on different issues span this, but we have no options. So it's either this or this. And so, but there are options. If you bring people together, you can create a whole lot more options. I mean, I was recently listening to a gentleman whose work I was reading some of his work, but it came from a guy who wrote, it's a book about the ancestors, and, looking at the world from, look at the world as if our ancestors were writing about it and thinking about it. Right. And I read about this guy from Japan who's doing this incredible work, if you talk about what's really possible. And he pulls people in, like a city could come in, and they would be having problems. And I'll use Minneapolis, where I'm from right now, just to have something specific. In Minneapolis, a few years ago, George Floyd was murdered, which set off riots in here, but also riots and protests around the world because of a police brutality situation. And a movement started here, defund the police. Okay. And
Right.
people have probably heard of it. That was an immediate knee-jerk reaction to what had actually happened. That we have to defund the police and we have to look at all these things and we have to be more strict and we have to. Anyway, so what this gentleman would do in the case of Minneapolis, which is struggling right now, is he would set up two groups, and he was doing testing to see the things that they came up with. And one group was Minneapolis would be, and this is figurative, it's not a real story I'm telling, would be Minneapolis residents and from right here, right now, and we're going to get people together to, come up with some good ideas about what we can do in the future. What we can do in Minneapolis now to tackle these issues. He set up another group, and they were told that it was 60 years from now or 50 years from now. And they lived in Minneapolis. And what is the kind of world that they wanted to be living in today? In 50 or 60 years from now, what do they want Minneapolis to do? And then the question that they had to answer is, so what does Minneapolis have to put in place years earlier to create this outcome that you're trying to reach, that you want the city to be like? And that group came up with entirely different ideas because they got out of their own mind in terms of, we got to get this and we got to get that and we got to take care of this and clamp down on this neighborhood. And, but wait a minute, what is that? What is the root cause of that? It's not just root cause, but what do we want to create on the other side? What is it we want it to be like? And if you can't look at it that way, you can't see what else is possible. You just see the immediate ideas that come out as opposed to what is the whole spectrum of things that can be put in place to create an outcome. I mean, so that's the kind of thing I'm thinking that I would like to do. I'd like to get this guy into the United States. I'd like to get him, his stuff out there working with cities and people around me. Because if people can look from the front end, what are we trying to create? What are they, what are we, what is happening around us? And then, then say, well, okay, this is what we want to create. Who else do we need to work with? And how can we gather people together to get this done? And, maybe education is, education of our young ones is probably more important than anything else. And we have a health issue and a lot of obesity in our town. And this is not good because we want people to have healthy lives. Well, maybe we should be doing this, back in 2023 to make it a better world. So to me, that's the look at what's really possible. That's what gets me excited. So,
we're gonna talk more about this, but I have this one example from my life. What's happening, even in my professional career. It's when you were telling about people stressing out or being in the moment and thinking about tackling the issues that are right now without thinking, outside, what is going to be happening in 50 years. Very similar things are actually happening with us in real time, even when you are trying to, adapt to a kind of recession in the business, because what's happening is when there is a stress, though, your horizon of planning is very short. You start planning with like month, a week, and the first reactions are optimizing, cutting cost, laying off, etc. So the reaction is just to stabilize the situation, etc. And what you expect from kind of a government or what you expect from CEO of the organization is to always think strategically what's going to happen with the organization in 5, 10 years, etc. Right? Whether the decisions are made. So now when you are kind of step back a bit and when you look at what's going to happen with the organization in 5 years, now you start thinking about, hey, we still need acquisition, we still need marketing, we still need to work on that product, right? Because it's not about the immediate stressed out sort of like decision that we need to make, right? So I think that what, you and I, what we expect and everyone expects from kind of a government to, whenever there is a crisis, you don't deal with the crisis with regards to how to deal with the crisis right now. You're like cutting down like police budgets, etc. But what do you want to live in 50, 60 years? Do you want to be in a country where police actually kind of protects you, right? And then you feel safe, etc. So these are the questions. So I think that, what's interesting is, and this is something that I love a lot about United States in generally, and there's a lot of countries in Europe that I've been to that are very community based, and then very often community take care of those things, right? Because it's not necessarily need to be, hey, we have this governor or this congressman or someone from the state that they will be taking care of us, but rather like, hey, what we as a community, how we can lead as an example to actually do that, right? The same goes with the team, right? CEO cannot take charge of the whole organization in the crisis and then tell you where to go and then make the right decisions, rather than the community, the team should actually be the one who getting together, helping each other, supporting each other, and then building the future of your organization the next 5-10 years, right?
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. I look at what's happening with Twitter right now. That's an interesting thing about all the changes that are being made at Twitter. And I'm not sure if anybody has any idea of where they're actually headed and what they're trying to create in the future. I mean, it's a company that seems to be knee-jerking right now.
Yeah. I don't know. It's I think that with example of these bigger social platforms, I think a lot of that is kind of politics, a lot of it, and I think that there is a left-wing platforms, there are right-wing platforms,
I
and you
know.
just kind of deal with like who will tell what's happening, etc. Right? To kind of balance out the view, but at the same time, listen,
Yes.
I think that it's a good thing that at least some pillars exist, because I'm Ukrainian, for example, right? And in our country, when we had two polar views, you always, if something you don't like one view, you go and you kind of have it another view, etc., right? But then when you have only one view of the entire like country or entire like media, etc., then it's scared, because now you don't realize whether that's a true view or that's just what you've been told for
Yeah.
for your entire life.
For your-
And
yep.
I actually, if you can, I'm probably going to share that with the listeners, but I liked a lot that the story that you posted on your website about the boy that you've met who asked you whether you are from the red state or from the blue state.
Yeah. Isn't
I
that
love
something?
that story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just telling you where we are as the society, right? Like that you
Yeah.
always need to be a camp, rather than what values you're standing for or what you want to do with your life, etc.
Yeah.
Right? It's just the camping.
Yeah. Well, when that boy asked me that question, it changed my life, because it was like, oh my God, he doesn't see me as a person.
Can we tell the story to the listeners?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was in another state, and my son played college football. And so my husband and I were at the game, and after the game, we went to have a hamburger, and we were standing in the restaurant, in the lobby of the restaurant. And a young guy, college student, started talking to me, and he said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "Minnesota, Minneapolis." He said, "Red state or blue state?" First question, not,
yeah.
"I've never been to Minnesota," or, "That's a long way from here." I mean, nothing like that.
Right.
Red state or blue state? First question. I said, well, Minnesota's an interesting state because we have a Republican governor at the time. We had 2 Democratic senators, and we had 8 representatives in the House of Representatives, and 4 were Democrats and 4 were Republicans. And our former governor had been Jesse Ventura, the professional wrestler who was an independent. And so I told that, and the kid looked at me like, "Oh, you didn't let me put you in the right box. I still don't know, are you friend or enemy, And so then he said to me, "What news channel? Where do you get your news?" And again, like, you're talking about social media platforms, they tend to skew one way or the other. But
Exactly.
because I'm trying to figure out how to pull people together in my mind, even back then, I'm reading news from both platforms. Both platforms, both sides of the fence. And so, essentially, I watched CNN, MSNBC, Fox, and I listed a few more, and, that's what I do. And then he turned away from me and never talked to me again, because he couldn't define if I was a friend or an enemy. Now, if you can't work together, I mean, he and I may have so many of the same values, but because of the media and what's going on from a political and media standpoint, we're not even talking. We're not talking. If we can't talk, we can't do anything.
Yeah. again, this is a great story. And the moral, for me is when people wants to take actions and work on something, they usually find a way to build a solution together, right? And there is
Yes.
no red
Yes.
or right or something. Work on the solution, right? In a
Right.
corporate environment, very often in sales, when you have an SDR working with sales exec, doesn't matter what you're working on. Everyone is working on the same goal, and
Yes.
whether you're in the red camp or blue
Yeah.
camp, right? And I think that very often we just need to again, to lead with example. And talking about the example, you mentioned that not many people actually taking actions, right? So can you speak to me what motivated you personally to take action and start what's really possible? Sorry, what's really possible? Because obviously, I remember even the last time we spoke, you said, "Hey, I'm working on this project, thinking about starting this project, etc. Let's see where it goes." But obviously, you spend time, cultivating the idea and just going with it, and say, "Hey, can I do this?" etc. So, can you speak to me? What was the time of you like actually saying, "You know what? I need to start that. Go ahead. I need to change the where I'm going with my career."
Well, let me just say my love and passion of sales came to a screeching halt after losing the three most important people in my life besides my kids, both parents and a husband. So suddenly I was faced with a lot of that in a short period of time, which wiped out the passion for sales. It's like, I mean, I think, you go through some trauma and it just kind of changes things.
Yeah.
But at some level, this had been festering underneath for years because because I use the phrase, I'm just one of those millions of people in the middle who believes. And every time I use that phrase, people would come to the middle and say, I am too. And it made me, I realized what a powerful phrase it was. So I bought a domain name probably in 2007 or 2008. I bought the millions in the middle domain name. .com, .org, .net, everything,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I at some point I knew that was important, and I'd been through my experience with the young college guy, and then this happened. So I was all prepared. After trying to think, 2020, I was ready to embark on this journey. Totally ready. I got myself grounded again in a new space, and everything was good. And then I had blocked off some time to go to a conference. I had identified when my last speaking engagement was going to be, and the conference was canceled because of COVID.
Right.
And suddenly the world shut down, and the way I learn best, I'm rather a social beast. The way I learn best is from interacting with people, and I didn't want to just watch a conference on Zoom. The conference was held on Zoom, but it held nothing for me. I mean, just hear speaker after speaker talk about what they're doing, because sitting right next to me at that conference could have been the most interesting person in the world who was doing something, and I missed that person.
Yeah.
And that to me was awful. So there, we're going on with COVID and everything. The world is shut down, and I'm spinning now because not only that, my daughter had to move in with me because she lived in an area that was being ransacked with the riots after George Floyd's death. So she moved in with me with her two cats, and it's like turmoil, and it kind of went on for a while. And I think finally what happened that kicked me into gear was about a year ago. Yeah, about a year ago. I was walking on a bridge, and if you've been to my What's Really Possible website, I have a story about the man on the Stone Arch Bridge. And he was a homeless guy who was on this bridge that I walk on just about every day. And he used to have a sign up that said, "Destitute, really." And he really was. And over time, I stopped to talk with him, and he was a reader, and we developed kind of a friendship. And then I didn't see him for a while. I was gone, and then he was gone, and I ran into him in the store, and he told me that he was all excited, and he was this little skinny man with this long hair, no teeth in front. I mean, he had led a hard life, and he told me he was going to Florida, and I said, "Florida, why?" And he said, "Because of the hurricanes in Florida, he said, they need my help.
Hmm.
And it was like, here's this man who has nothing, who's, living, begging for, money to get food. And he's going to Florida to help out. And he said, do you have any extra tools that you could give me? I need a tool belt and I need some tools. And I said, well, I'll go check. And so I met him the next day, bring him some tools. I met him that day too with some more tools. But he just inspired me so much that a man who had nothing. Anyway, why did he need the tools? I need to say that. He needed the tools because he was going to hitchhike to Florida, which is a long drive, 2.5 days from where I live.
Yeah.
And he was going to hitchhike down there. And he wanted a tool belt with tools to hold up and a sign that said Florida, and then the tool belt so people would know he was going down to work. Yeah. And it was like, oh my God, I'm sitting here spinning, trying to decide what I want to do. And here's this man who has nothing and he's going to help. And it was like, that hit me. And it was like, I got to get going. And then I realized that if I let go of the Millions in the Middle website, I could do it. If I retitled it under What's Really Possible, because I really like creating possibility and helping people see more ways to address the situation, helping people get unstuck. And if under that umbrella, I felt permission to bring Jill into it. Like the other one felt too political, I had to be like a wonk and really understand all the political issues and the environmental issues. And it made me think I had to be too smart. And I don't claim to be smart in all those areas. And I don't want to be smart in all those areas because there are people who love them, and that's what they do. And they just need to be inspired into action. So once I got a new name and once I could work with What's Really Possible, then the idea blossomed.
What do you think a lot of people don't take action?
They don't think that there's anything they can do. They think it's, they just throw up their arms. What can I do? Mm-hmm. They don't see the possibilities. They I don't know. They just think that the problems facing the world are so huge and so, difficult. And what could one little person who lives in X town do?
Yeah.
But there are things that can be done in communities. There are so many things that can be done right where we are. It's not all about politics. There's about taking care of our neighbors. There's about taking care of the riverfront that goes, by you. It's about helping the homeless people, who don't have a place to sleep or getting them medical care or doing something to help people be healthy. There's so many things you can do to make a better world. And if all of us can contribute our strengths and our passions, it'll be a lot better as opposed to just saying, what can I do? But I honestly think that the media has made it seem impossible.
Yeah. Because every problem we're trying to tackle feels like it's a huge global crisis or a problem that one single individuals cannot tackle, right? Although, if you can look at the problem more constructively and say, hey, here's what I can do, here's what you can do, and we all else can tackle that, then it's a different ballgame, right?
Right. Well, even, for me, I'm thinking, well, what the hell can my one little website do? And I had to keep putting that aside and say, no, it will help. And I don't, and people say to me, well, Jill, how are you going to measure success? I don't know. If I can incite one person or, to take action on something in their hometown that makes a difference, or if I can, help one person bring others together in a coalition to say, let's tackle this. To me, one of the things that's been fascinating recently is in Pennsylvania, a bridge collapsed because of the flooding. Right. And I think it was the mayor of the city called people together, mayor or the governor called people together, and they were able to create a workaround in 2 weeks because it was a freeway that affected so many people going in and out of the cities. But by pulling people together, saying, how else? What can we do? Is there something we can do in the interim while we're working on the main thing? They were able to unstop the blockage and get traffic flowing, not with a perfect solution, but with one that would work now while they worked on the longer term solution. And that's what, that's the kind of thing we can come together like that if we choose.
I have another guest on the show, and we've discussed about, and I asked the question, what can I do to support women in my organization as leaders to be more successful? And then the answer I got was like, just ask what you can do to support it. So I think that this is a great way of, like, we can make a change, we can take action if we first ask what needs to be changed and then get together to change it, right? So I think that when you say like, hey, what can I do with with just having a small website, I think you can do a lot if you have access to people, to platforms that you can ask, hey guys, what we can do, and then actually organizing and people doing that and leading with an example. I think that you can do a lot of great things, right? Just leading people with example. So my actually question is like right about this point, how to be a better person? What do you do to be a better person?
What do I do to be a better person? Whoa. That's a good one. I jump in to help a lot of people in my neighborhood. I mean, I jump in. If I see somebody doing something that looks hard, I'm there to help. I mean, that's just a little simple thing that I do. What do I do to be a better person? I think a lot about what's possible. I look at all sorts of different options, and I'm looking at different methodologies, and I'm fascinated by what's happening. There's a website called Creating a Future, and Hilde Gottlieb works with a lot of nonprofits, and she does amazing work to help nonprofits maximize their resources and come together to create a future that they didn't imagine that they could do. So I'm involved with people like that. And the other thing what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get monthly sessions, like an interview with somebody like this, what we have today. And I just featured the Everyday Patriot, the guy Tom Morris, who wrote the Everyday Patriot. He was wonderful. And he talked about 100 different ways that we could all make a difference locally. That, it's not about the big international issues, but, so what do? I write, and that's what I probably do best. I write and I talk. I mean, I'm not sure I talk well yet because I'm just learning the words of this new place I'm going into, but I just don't want to inflame people, and language makes such a difference.
Yeah. Something that I am personally curious about, and because I'm a huge fan of storytelling and great characters and the character arc and development. I wanted to ask you the following. I mean, you have amazing, successful sales career and just generally career, and I want to ask you, are you happy with the way your career, professional career, sales career went?
Oh, yeah. I could never have imagined it. I mean, let me just say, it didn't start out, I never intended to go this route in life. And it's been a wonderful journey that's been peppered by serendipity throughout the journey. I mean, I was a teacher to start with, a high school teacher, and I hated it, and I tried to get out of it. Nobody would hire me. So then I decided to start my own company, and I pulled together some people and a couple friends we met on a weekly or monthly basis. And I used to spend all my Saturdays in the library because the internet wasn't available back then. But I was researching companies, and I came up with a brilliant idea. After almost a year of research, I put together 2 facts, and I went, oh my God, I could work on that. This is something that we are capable of doing. And so then I studied how to write a business plan, and then I got us in front of a government agency whose job was to help small businesses with their growth. And the guy said that we were working with, he said, this is really a great idea. It's going to work. It's timely. It's perfect. And then he looked at the 3 of us and said, now, which one of you is going to be doing the sales? And I leaned forward with the nastiest look on my face. And I said, because I hated sales. I thought it was a disgusting, horrible profession. And I said, I thought you said this was a good idea. And he said, it is, Jill, but somebody's got to sell it. And I said, well, we're going to have to talk about this. So you can see I did not ever aspire to be doing what I'm doing, and then from a serendipity standpoint too. I mean, it took a while. I tried getting jobs, couldn't get a job in sales, and then went to a big convention thing where they were job fair, and interviewed. I tried to walk around interviewing companies, and I got rejected from everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat down with myself, and I said, Jill, do you don't deserve this. No, they're just making you feel rotten. So I left. And as I was walking out of the big civic center, there was a big, huge ramp going down for people to exit. And there was one man coming up. And he stopped me, said, how was it? And I said, you really want to know? And he said, yeah, I'm the guy who organized this whole thing. And I said, well, let me tell you. So I dumped on him about, talking to General Mills, Pillsbury, Multi-Foods, Munsingware. I mean, everybody threw me off. And he said, did you talk to the people at Xerox? And I said, no. And he said, come with me. I'm going to introduce you to them. He walked me back in, walked me up to the hiring manager at Xerox and said, you need to hire her. This is Jill. You need to hire her. And 3 weeks later, I was working for the best sales training company in the world at that time. One of the best organizations. So did I aspire to this? Never. Did I have fun doing it? I loved it. Once I got out of teaching and into all those offices and got new products and then moved from, copy machines to computers to professional services, it was like, oh, this is learning every day. It was so fun.
What are you proud of the most throughout your career?
That I kept growing. That I didn't stop and rest on my laurels and, give the same speech time after time, which is what I see happening with so many people. They get their stump speeches and they just repeat and repeat and they become more of an entertainer. I mean, I'm still a learner. I'm moving forward now. So, I guess I like growth.
Now, do you have any regrets? Maybe missed opportunities?
No. I mean, yes, but the regrets sometimes lead you down different paths that you would never, have gone to. If something happened that wasn't good, then I changed what I was doing that led to something that was better. I mean, the fact that I lost all my work when, around 2000, when both my big clients that had booked me out for 5 months, when I was out of work for a long time and trying to figure it out. And they said, hang in there, Jill, we'll be back. But they didn't come back. But had that not happened, I would never have done anything that I did. I would never have written all the books I've written on sales. I would never have been a speaker. Right. I would never have done any of that. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today because moving into what I was doing gave me a lot more confidence that I wasn't just, a little gal from Minneapolis who was, talking here, that I had something that was worth saying. It was worth sharing. So the regrets, they lead you down different paths that can open up opportunities that you never saw. Never.
All right. So this question is out of the blue, but now you kind of talked about the books, as a speaker, how you work with clients. I was wondering, what do you think created the biggest impact on the world or on your legacy? So the books, or the clients you serviced and the outcomes of those clients, the organization that they're bringing on, the impact, or the people that you work with directly, coached, or as a speaker that you resonated with. What do you think created the biggest impact on the world or on the kind of legacy that you leave after yourself?
Professionally speaking, I had to make a choice after, and I'm going to get logical here on you first. There got to a point where I was starting to be asked to speak a lot because of the books. And because of the books and all the speaking that was coming my way to come and talk to the sales organizations or at conferences, I had to make a choice. And that was to give up my consulting business. because I couldn't throw myself in and be a really good consultant for one company if I wanted to share with a whole bunch of
Yeah.
other companies. So it literally, I remember shutting down the client work. I mean, and I had really good impact with my clients, but I saw that my mission was bigger and that my job was to reach out to more people to help them feel that it was possible to do, these things. So I don't know what had more impact. I mean, the reality is I had to make choices, and I chose greater impact as opposed to helping one company. And so the books were the way to the speaking, but the books cemented my expertise for time. And, people can go back, but the speaking probably touched more people and had a direct impact there. So there's different impacts. And I don't choose one. Isn't that funny? I don't choose one. It's kind of a overall legacy. And,
Yeah.
This
is a great answer. I mean, I've asked this to a few guests of mine, and everyone has a totally different answer. So, So this is something that I'm curious about, asking people like yourself who have a very successful career, who are accomplished in a lot of different areas, and who tackled a lot of different aspects of their life and how they approach things, right? Because that's the way I'm gonna learn, and it's something that I, wanted to that helped me with my own, self reflection, right? All right, and as a closing message, something that we didn't speak about, something I didn't ask you, or the message that you would want to leave off with, or to close up our discussion today. Anything you wanted to close up on to the listeners listening to this?
Again, I feel that so much is possible. And there is a poem called "It Couldn't Be Done" by Edgar Guest. And it starts out, "They said it couldn't be done, but he with a smile replied that maybe it couldn't, but he'd be the one who wouldn't say so till he tried." So he buckled right in, and I can't remember the exact words, and he did it. So I mean, the poem itself is priceless. They said it couldn't be done is the title. It couldn't be done. And it's kind of like the message of my life. Don't tell me it can't be done. Let's figure it out. There's so much that can be done, and every one of us can, if we approach things like that, and I don't mean stupidly, I mean approach it, so much can get done. But to just say, there's no way, there's always a way. We just haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, and it will be done. Thank you so much, Jill, for joining me for this amazing conversation. I had so much fun and inspiration from you. Thank you so much for sharing the energy and being here with me today.
Well, thanks for asking me about all these things too. It's been fun.